Et merci de nous accueillir, enfin de m'accueillir ici dans la maison du Dr Bach. Et je voulais avoir un petit entretien avec toi, profiter de passer du temps ici pour plusieurs choses en fait. Déjà, voilà, il y avait un projet qui avait abouti avec Émilie, grâce à Émilie Pilar qui est dessinatrice. Elle était étudiante à l'époque.
Yeah.
Et donc j'avais eu un coup de cœur sur ses dessins. J'avais eu l'idée et l'envie de partager ses dessins sur des trousses pour ranger les élixirs. Et à l'époque, comme elle était étudiante, elle ne pouvait pas recevoir de l'argent, elle ne pouvait pas me facturer.
Okay.
Et donc on avait décidé ensemble de reverser une partie de cet argent au Centre Bach.
Yeah, very kind of you, yes, and of Emily.
Oui, de la part d'Émilie. Et du coup, c'est vrai qu'il y a eu donc 1 500 € qui ont été envoyés au Centre Bach. Et pour moi, c'est important de remercier les gens et les clients et de leur dire, voilà, avec cet argent, qu'est-ce qui a pu être fait ou à quoi il va servir s'il n'a pas encore été.
We haven't used it yet. We've
Okay.
kept it in reserve. What we're trying to do is make the centre a bigger attraction, if you like, so more of a visitor centre. So when people come, there's more to see.
Okay.
And so at the moment we're in the process of converting what used to be a tincture preparation room into a different kind of space. And there's also a second upstairs room, which will be the second part of the museum.
Okay.
And once we've got all that in place, the money that you and Emily and your customers raised will be used to create signage, so nice signs that show people where everything is.
Okay.
Explanation boards with a little bit of story about what people are looking at.
Mm-hmm.
We're also thinking of trying to put together some kind of online app or something, so you can download it on your phone and it will kind of walk you around the centre and show you everything there is to see.
Okay.
So those are the sort of things that we're going to use that money for.
Okay.
But it has to wait until we've actually got the building stuff done, because there's obviously no point putting up nice signs if people are So that's taking longer than we hoped. We were hoping to get all this done last year. It's probably now looking like next year, but that's where it will go. Yeah.
Bon, c'est chouette ça.
Yeah, be good.
Je pourrais voir ça peut-être l'année prochaine ou dans 2 ans alors.
Yeah.
Quand je reviendrai.
So, yeah.
Donc ça c'est la salle en fait où il y a la préparation des teintures mères qui se fait là, en fait des élixirs mères qui se fait à côté. Et puis effectivement j'ai vu une petite pièce à côté de la pièce du musée, c'est cette pièce-là dont tu parles.
Yes, it's the one. Yeah, it's the opposite side of the landing, which used to be my office.
Ah, okay.
That's going to be the second room for the museum. We've already got some things in there.
Ok, donc là, le musée va s'agrandir.
Yes, that's the
D'accord.
plan. The idea is that the whole old part of the house, so all the part that was here when Dr Bach was here, that will all be open to visitors now.
Et toi, ton bureau, alors, il va être où?
I'm now in the back room upstairs. So I'm where my office now is where John Ramsell's office was, which is the floor above Nora's old workroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's the kind of the more modern part of the house. Yeah.
D'accord. Ok, chouette. Bon, bah voilà, une réponse à la question qu'on se posait. Bah, c'est un chouette projet, donc on pourra revenir voir ça tranquillement. Et puis, il y a eu des petites questions qui ont été posées par des conseillers agréés.
Okay.
Et donc, je voulais voir avec toi s'il y avait des choses auxquelles tu pouvais répondre, enfin donner ton éclairage en fait.
Yeah, I had a quick look at these. Yeah.
Donc, il y avait, existe-t-il une base de données récente de tous les écrits, alors les vidéos officiellement, mais y compris les lettres, les colloques, les conférences du Dr Bach?
I think a database is probably a bit overstating it.
Okay.
The thing is, I mean, a lot. I was having a quick look at those questions, and a lot of the issues we have with Dr Bach is that he didn't keep things. He was someone who liked to live lightly and travel lightly. Mm-hmm. So when he left London, he threw away a whole load of papers and research notes and things. He literally broke up his test tubes. I mean, his colleagues stopped him because they wanted to carry it. So, but he would have literally destroyed everything and just left with nothing but a couple of suitcases. And then when he came here, in 1935, the year before he died, he had a bonfire in the garden and burnt a load of papers that he'd amassed in the years between leaving London and coming here. So in fact, there aren't kind of huge archives.
Okay.
Because all we have really are the things that Nora and Victor kind of saved from the fire, and of course the things that Dr Bach himself wanted left. So mainly the 12 healers and Heal Thyself, and also some of his previous publications. Some of them he actually himself didn't want left.
Oui,
so he used to, for example, the older versions of the 12 healers, he would tell his publisher to destroy the old version and print the new one. He always wanted the current version there. But of course, they were out there, people kept them, and back in the 1980s they were republished, so they're quite easy to find now. So there isn't actually a great deal that's not already published in one form or another. But it's never been put together in any kind of database, mainly because there's not actually that much to make a database of. I mean, if you go through the original writings, the little collection of original writings, there's that. There's a book that he wrote before he left London on homeopathy, which I've never been able to find a copy of. I think it's very, very rare. That book. There's also a book by a lady called Mary Tabor, who was a lady who lived around the corner from here. Yes, in Wellsprings. Yeah, and she wrote a novel about. Well, it's a sort of a novel, but it's pretty obviously not a novel. I mean, there's a character in it called the Lady of the Flowers, who lives in a house on a raised bank. It's basically Mount Vernon. It's Nora and Mount Vernon. She's got. It's quite strange because there are actually two characters in the book who are Dr Bach. I think. I mean, there's a character who kind of wanders in and out. There's a bit of kind of a spiritual teacher. And then there's another character who is Mary. I can't remember the name in the book, but there's one of the main female characters is also Mary, and her husband is the other one who is I'm sure they're both versions of Dr Bach. But that's quite interesting because it does give you a kind of an insight into the way Bach's friends were thinking about the thing, and there's a lot in there which I'm sure is very close to what Dr Bach thought about, the need to live in the moment. There's a whole load of stuff about living in the moment, which is very close to what Dr Bach said in his own writings. So that's interesting. But our plan with all these things is to actually publish them all at some point. Is just finding the time to actually do that, and we have started doing it. On the website, we've got loads of free texts, PDF texts that people can download. So we've got the the kind of finished 12 healers. We've got Heal Thyself, Free Thyself, all those things. I've also got just waiting to be edited. Really, there's a kind of collections of letters and things like that. So we're going to put it all out there at some point. With some of the older stuff, the things that Dr Bach specifically didn't want republished, and that he was afraid would kind of change how people understood the system. That's more of a problem for us. But we may end up publishing them anyway, but making sure we have footnotes and an introduction to try and put them in context. Because for years we tried to obey Dr Bach by not having them republished, but the trouble is now they have been republished without our permission, and there's really nothing you can't put them back in the box now because they're out there. So rather than have them out there just as if they're the final word, it would be good to actually put them in a context for people. But database, no. But
Parce que je pense à un livre qu'on avait en France qui s'appelait Les conférences du Dr Bach, qui est malheureusement arrêté. C'est plus publié en français en tout cas. Est-ce que ça, c'est des choses que tu comptes éventuellement republier,
I mean, what we did with the 12 healers, we published was the 1941 edition, which was basically the 1936 edition while Dr Bach was alive, but that also included the longer introduction that he dictated between that publication, 1936, and the day he died. So that's the most complete edition. And with that, what we did was we tried to get people to translate it into all kinds of languages. And it is in about 20 odd languages. and a lot of the other texts are also in other languages. I mean, French being one of the most represented. So I think we've got the Wallingford Lectures in French. Heal Thyself, I think, is in French. So yeah, I mean, all of that stuff would be nice to have. In all the languages. And I like the idea of publishing them online. Well, first because it's free, but also I think because it gives you the opportunity to update things. Because whenever you publish a translation, or every translation is an approximation. You never really get close. So if you publish it and then someone comes along and says, I have a better way to do that sentence, well then you can easily change it online. You don't have to kind of wait for an edition to
améliorer à chaque fois, repréciser et tout. C'est vrai que c'est un gros travail les traductions, mais des fois il y a eu des erreurs, notamment dans certains livres. Ça
I think in all books, and I mean, you know, even like my own books, when I read the ones where I can read the translation, there are all kinds of problems in there, and of course. Some of the books, like if you get a book published in Chinese,
oui, bien sûr, c'est inévitable, c'est sûr. Parmi les questions, connaît-on les influences amicales, philosophiques et spirituelles du Dr Bach? Quelles ont été ses lectures, ses voyages, ses rencontres? Alors c'est vrai que ce sont toujours des questions qui reviennent très souvent parce que les gens s'interrogent sur l'aspect beaucoup plus personnel du Dr Bach.
Sure.
Alors évidemment, comme tu dis, il n'a pas laissé de journal intime.
he didn't leave much, and I mean, even at the most basic level, did he ever leave the country? I don't know. We don't know for sure. When you look at the timeline of his life, I don't think he ever left. I mean, as far as I know, it looks unlikely that he ever left England and Wales. We know he went to Wales loads of times. But he was, you know, he left school. He was straight away working for his parents. Then he was studying medicine for years. Yeah. Then he was he volunteered to join, you know, the army in the First World War, but was turned down. So he spent the war in this country, and. Really, there's no gap. There's no gap unless you know, and obviously in those days it wasn't like these days where you might get on an aeroplane and you go to Brussels for a weekend or something. You know, it's rather more difficult. So, as far as I know, he basically lived his whole life in England and Wales. The books he read, we can only infer from the things that he wrote. So when you
oui, parce qu'ici il n'y avait pas de livre. Il n'y avait aucun livre à
lire.
Well,
when he moved in here, he had no books with him. There were no books with him.
Même ici, après, il n'a pas fait l'acquisition de livres, il n'y a rien qui reste.
No. People have left books, people have given us books, they would have given him books. So, but they wouldn't have been books he chose because he had no money. They were books that people have got for him. So we can infer from the things he writes, especially in Heal Thyself, that he was interested in religion and spirituality. We know that he called himself a Christian, but he wasn't just interested in Christian spirituality. He was also interested in Hinduism, in Indian philosophy generally. He was friends with, in London, he was friends with, when he started working with the Royal London Homeopathic Hospital, he was friends with a lot of pretty well-known homeopaths of the time. And these were people who had probably more of an interest in spirituality as a subject than you would find in the average homeopath these days. So these were people who were interested in that side of life. He was also, of course, a Mason, a member of the Freemasons, which was a very ordinary thing, especially in those days, for any professional man. It was almost kind of expected, and I say man deliberately. Any professional man was expected to join the Masons because it was a way that you know, before Facebook, it was how you networked. You made friends and you kind of got to know who did what. So he was in that. Now his interest in the Masons, it seems pretty clear from what he writes, especially from the Wallingford lecture that he gave. He was actually very interested in that side of things. because he did become. I'm not a mason. I don't know all the titles, but they've got all these different titles. He held a number of different titles. He was a member of several lodges.
Okay.
And if you read the Wallingford lecture he gave to the Masons, it's full. It is kind of couched in that kind of language, so it's very kind of overtly spiritual. So he was clearly very interested in that. But it's very hard to be specific.
Ouais.
To sort of say, did he meet this person? Well,
oui, on n'a pas
we have no way of knowing. Yeah, because he didn't leave a diary or anything
c'est
like
ça.
that.
Il nous manque le
So
journal.
you're kind of reading between the lines.
Ouais, c'est ça. On est très curieux, on aimerait en savoir plus, mais le mystère.
It's one of the reasons I think why nobody's yet written a really, apart from Nora Weeks, who wrote very much about his working life. No one's really come along and done a convincing work on his life outside what he did with the remedies, because there isn't actually much raw material. I mean, there was one. I read a book by someone, an Argentinian writer, called it Psychobiography, and basically what he'd done was guess.
Okay.
So he basically invented whole conversations and so it was a bit like a novelisation of it rather than.
Oui, après c'est ça. En France aussi, il y a un roman qui est sorti. Voilà, c'est romanesque.
Oh yes, I saw. Yeah, but that at least doesn't claim to be anything else. That is saying this is a novel. The Psychobiography was claiming more scientific rigor, but didn't really have it.
Oui, non, en France c'est un roman, c'est une nouvelle, et c'est dit comme ça. C'est appuyé sur les écrits de Nora Weeks, donc ça suit la chronologie.
That's fine. No, I am very slowly reading
voilà.
that. Yes.
Donc c'est ok. Là, il y a une question alors plus technique, on va dire, qui concerne les élixirs eux-mêmes par rapport à la préservation de leur qualité. Certaines personnes s'interrogent quels sont les moyens mis en œuvre pour préserver l'énergie des plantes et les préparations compte tenu des nouvelles technologies, la 5G, l'utilisation des codes barres, etc. Je me souviens que dans ton livre, toi tu disais que quand on passait un portique d'aéroport, ça ne détériorait pas les plantes. Bon, moi j'ai beaucoup voyagé avec les fleurs et j'ai pas perçu en tout cas de changement dans la qualité de l'énergie de la plante, mais beaucoup de questions, beaucoup de gens s'interrogent.
I think the concern comes from homeopathy, where homeopathic remedies are typically treated as very, very fragile. So that's why you're supposed to take them away from food and not drink coffee and all these rules. None of that applies with patch. Now the thing about, if you think about, there's two parts to that really. There's the plants first of all. So what steps are taken to preserve the plants? Well, sadly in our world, not enough steps are taken to preserve the plants. But any remedy maker, and this applies to any company or any individual making a remedy, what you're looking for is the flower, the most perfect flowers you can find. So if something is growing somewhere where it's affected badly, you wouldn't use it to prepare the remedy. And this is one of the reasons why you can never prepare all 38 in 1 year, because there might be some adverse. You take last summer for example. Over here it was absolutely arid. It was a dreadful summer for anything that likes water. So a lot of remedies couldn't really be made that year. So the main step you take is that you only use flowers that have developed properly, that you can see are healthy.
Oui, on voit
and
la
if they're
différence.
healthy,
On voit les différences avec Mimulus. Hier, Mimulus était sous le soleil, elle était merveilleuse. Cette nuit, il a beaucoup plu.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Elle a plus du tout la même tête, la pauvre Mimulus. Elle est complètement. Donc déjà par l'aspect, en fait, parce que
basically,
visuel,
but the fact that it's growing well and it seems happy, if you like, then you can say, okay, that flower is one we can use. Apart from that, you obviously wouldn't ever use a site that was obviously polluted, because of, for obvious reasons. To speak specifically about this garden, we're not involved in the commercial side ourselves anymore, but we still allow Nelsons to come and gather plants from flowers from the garden, and the garden for about the last 15 years has been inspected by the Soil Association, which is the kind of organic soil association. Yes, so they come every year and take a look around to make sure that everything's as it should be. They also, as I understand it, do a sample of the sites away from here. But even there, they're taking a view on whether it's if it's being sprayed with pesticides or even fertilizer or anything like that, then obviously it couldn't be used. So there's that kind of degree of quality as well. And then if you talk about the actual remedies, they are extremely tough. They really are tough. That's why you can take them in food. It's why you can mix remedies up in a cream or put them in your coffee or have them in your tea or all these things. None of that matters because they are very, very tough. So all kinds of theoretical problems over the years have been suggested, and I mean 5G's the current 5G's. That's the new one. Okay. Now I can't sit here and say that 5G won't affect the remedies because we haven't seen it in action yet. But to be honest, I'm probably more worried about the effect of 5G on bees and insects that use those frequencies to navigate than I am on the effect on plants or on the remedies. But time will tell. But as far as things like barcode readers, I mean, they've been used forever. I mean, all a barcode reader is a little light beam. I mean, it's never been, no problem's ever been seen with it. The other things people are concerned about are X-ray scanners at airports. They've flown all over the world, remedies, never been a problem. They're concerned about electromagnetic waves from the back of televisions or from fridges. Well, I mean, we've been...
tout ce qu'il y a, le wifi, tout ce qu'il y a dans
basically, I mean, and again, none of it matters. I mean, we've got the remedies, the set of remedies we use there to make up treatment bottles in our workroom. There's a computer above, in the floor above, and there's a computer in the same room. There's a fridge in the next room, and we have been telling people for at least 30 years to keep their treatment bottles in the fridge to help keep them cool. And if that were a terrible idea, we would have expected to have heard about it by now. So, I think all of those things, I think people get worried about the theoretical problem, but it is more theoretical than actual. Although I stand to be corrected on 5G if it turns out to be, but then I'm not going to, being anxious about something that might never happen. There's a remedy for that.
Okay, donc la formation des fleurs est résistante.
Yes, absolutely. They are very tough. They are really tough. The only point really where you have to be careful with remedies is when you're actually making them.
Oui.
Okay, so when you've collected the plants, you try to avoid touching them because you don't want the heat of your hand taking anything out. And you try to not intervene in the process. So we would, for example, if we put the bowl in the sun, we would be careful not to walk between the bowl and the sun and just cut off the sun. So those are the only parts where you have to be any kind of caution.
Très précautionneux quand on prépare les élixirs et de bien respecter toutes les indications laissées par le Dr Bach. Ok. Est-ce qu'il existe un document qui répond à toutes les objections critiques liées aux fleurs de Bach, que ce soit sur le plan philosophique, matériel et concurrentiel?
There isn't. I don't think there's a document. I'm not even sure it's possible to have a document because it's more. It's not so much that there are a series of objections that like someone's come up with a list, but these are all the things I don't agree with. I mean, if you had that, then you.
Ou alors peut-être il faudrait proposer à cette personne qui a posé cette question
that's what we need.
De faire une liste.
But the trouble is, it's not really a list; it's an argument. And if someone came up with their list and then I sat down and wrote a document carefully refuting every single one of their points, they wouldn't just say, oh, okay. They would come back with another list.
Ça n'en finirait jamais.
It's a debate and an argument rather than something you can finish. I never push my own stuff, but there is. I did write a book called Bloom, which isn't actually in French, but I did
Oui,
write a book
je l'ai vu
called
dans la
Bloom,
librairie, il n'est pas encore traduit.
And one of the things I tried to do
Ouais.
with that was to make a kind of political argument about how we use remedies and why we do the things we do. So there's some stuff in there. There's an awful lot in Heal Thyself. If you reread Heal Thyself, there's a lot in Heal Thyself. In Free Thyself too. But the bottom line, I think, in the end, is if people refuse to try the remedies because they have a pre-existing conviction they won't work, that is not a scientific attitude.
Right.
That is a prejudice.
Right.
I mean, we've had. It's funny. In recent years, we've had a fair few scientists come through courses here. People who, we had a physicist, we've had a few engineers, we've had people with various kind of those sort of hard kind of qualifications, who are very open to it, very open to all the things. And then there are others who are completely closed. And I think this says more about the people than it does about the actual validity of the argument. And I would always say to someone, look, we try to be honest about it. We don't. I would never sit here and talk to you about quantum mechanics and about all this kind of energy transfer, because the truth is I don't know enough about quantum mechanics to make any sense. So why pretend I can? It's better just to be honest and say, okay, these remedies seem to have an effect on these emotions. Loads of people have tried it and found that to be the case. And if you don't think they have that effect, well, okay. There you are, but I mean, there's all these people saying they do. Now you can try it for yourself and see if it works, or if you don't want to do that, then set up a proper study. But don't set up a study that's designed to fail. Right. Don't set up a study where you start by giving everyone the same mix, when the whole point of the system is that everyone has a personal mix. Don't set up a study where you restrict the number of times people can take remedies, when in reality you take them whenever you need to and for as long as you need to. So have something that actually is designed to show whether or not there's an effect. Most of the studies that have been set up have been they've been on the emergency mix because that's easy. It avoids having to get people involved to select remedies. So it looks like a good idea to a researcher. The problem is that if you give everyone the emergency mix, you're not treating anyone's basic issues. You're just giving them. It's a bit like you were going to test out. It's a bit like saying I'm going to test whether hospitals can treat cancer, and in order to do that, I'm going to give everyone one jot of radiation and see what happens. Well, nothing's going to happen. It's silly. I mean, you set it up to fail. So it needs to be done properly. So those are the two options someone's got who is a determined skeptic. Well, either set up a proper study so you can find out, or try it. Just try it. And then if it works, does it matter how it works? I mean, people will find out how it works at some point, I'm sure.
Et puis après, c'est à nous de prendre notre verveine aussi, pour laisser couler ça, et puis ça leur appartient en fait.
I think that's the other thing. Yeah, I think that's the other thing. I mean, and there's definitely, especially with practitioners, I think there is a kind of a tendency to be almost indignant that people won't try it and won't listen to reason. But in the end, that's not our problem. It's the other person who's on their path.
Les fleurs, elles font leur chemin avec le temps, quoi qu'il en soit, parce que on voit bien que de plus en plus, il y a, comme tu dis, de plus en plus de gens, de médecins, d'hôpitaux, de cliniques, de sages-femmes, de maternités les utilisent. Donc elles font leur petit bonhomme de chemin, comme on dit en français. Et puis,
and I think that's the way it should be, because that's how the system grew from Dr Bach's day. It was never someone did a massive study and there was a huge splash in the newspapers and suddenly everyone was buying them. It was very much bottom up. It was local, small level. It was ordinary people using them. And I mean, Dr Bach's the whole drift of his life in the last couple of years when he was working on the system was towards making it very simple. And he had this idea in his head that, you go back to this time when every home would have its little book of herbal remedies. and people will go out and collect their own plants and make their own medicines for themselves and their families. And he kind of wanted to get back to that. And that's very empowering, and I think that's much more important than proving something in a lab. I mean, this is why we've never been interested in setting up studies, because we don't honestly mind how they work. The important thing is they work, and then because they're very simple, anyone can use them. So that's kind of our angle on it.
Donc faisons confiance aux fleurs tout simplement, et au travail, voilà, à ce qu'elles font, quoi, ce qui se passe et à leur évolution naturelle dans le temps avec la société dans laquelle on vit.
And also have confidence in the evolution of the person who's refusing to try them, because you know, in the end that's where they are. That's their path.
C'est ça, c'est leur chemin. Exactement, tout à fait, tout à fait. Ok. Bon, bah, je crois qu'on a fait le tour des questions. Moi, j'ai envie de te poser une question par rapport au fonctionnement du Centre Bach. Est-ce que le Centre Bach aurait besoin d'aide, de contributions pour alléger son fonctionnement? Parce que je vois dans la vie ici, hein, donc concrètement, toi ici, tu accueilles le public, tu fais plein de choses et du coup, je ne sais pas combien il y a d'employés.
It's not always like this.
Là, c'est les vacances peut-être.
Yeah, it's because of the time of year. Yeah, I mean, we had two people on holiday at the same time, which was unfortunate. So yeah, it's been an interesting week, but you know, in a way, that's quite good for me to get out of my office and move away from the emails a bit. Perhaps not as good for the people who are waiting for answers to emails, but never mind. No, I mean, we want to, we're kind of reaching a space where we can be self-financing off the income we get from things like registration renewals and the courses we run here. I mean, we currently are, as you probably know, in across Europe, we're basically kind of managing the whole of Europe for education. I mean, obviously in some countries, like in France, you've got schools who are doing the day-to-day anyway, so that's much easier for us, but that isn't in every country. So there's quite a lot of stuff we do that isn't paid for, because we don't charge it. But at the moment, we are kind of getting to a point where we are kind of self-sufficient. So we're okay. Thank you for offering.
Parce qu'on se demande toujours comment est-ce qu'on peut contribuer, qu'est-ce qu'on pourrait faire, est-ce qu'il y a besoin de quelque chose auquel voilà, on pourrait participer en tant
I think the real support people can be to the centre is to obviously, if you're a practitioner, re-register. That would be lovely. But the main support, whether or not people are on the register, the main support is simply to represent the remedies and represent the system. Because we always try and remember that what we're here for is to represent the system and the way it's used and the simplicity of it. And that's much more important than, you know, writing a check or something. It's much more important that you're just out there using the remedies and telling people about them. And there you go. That's the important thing.
Ça, c'est un beau message.
Oh, okay.
C'est chouette. Non, bah merci. De toute façon, moi, je me republie toujours sur mon site, effectivement, le lien pour que les conseillers puissent souscrire. Souvent, on me demande à quoi ça sert de payer au Centre Bach, mais c'est pour faire vivre ce jardin, vivre cette maison, partager, continuer. Ils attendent quelque chose, mais en fait, c'est comme c'est une contribution à la vie.
I see it as I mean, people sometimes do ask us, you know, what do I get for my money? But one of the things you get is that we're still here.
Et puis ils peuvent tous venir.
Yes, absolutely, everyone can come. But it's a two-way thing. I mean, the practitioners joining the register, staying on the register, that helps us to continue, and that helps to make the register something worth being on and stands for something. So it's a kind of a mutual aid. So, you know, I mean, we try not to make it horribly expensive. I hope it's not horribly expensive. But that's the kind of that's what people are getting from it. So you're part of a team. If you're part of a family, if you like, if you're in on the register, because it's a way of supporting what we do here, and which allows us in turn to support what you do out there. So yeah.
Oui, je confirme, ça fait un peu comme une grande famille parce que comme je dois partir en Écosse, normalement si tout va bien, j'ai contacté grâce au groupe Facebook des thérapistes écossaises et tout de suite elles m'ont parlé comme si on se connaissait en fait. C'est vrai qu'il y a un côté, et partout quand on voyage,
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice like that. I mean,
on parle la même langue.
Yes,
presque,
exactly
tu
that.
vois.
Exactly that. Even when you don't speak the same language.
Voilà,
you speak
c'est
the
vrai,
same
hein,
language.
c'est
It's like
quelque
us, we're
chose
not
qui
speaking
nous,
the same language.
ouais, voilà, exactement le bon exemple, qui nous relie les uns aux autres. Donc voilà. Bon, en tout cas, merci pour ce temps passé,
Pleasure.
pour répondre aux questions des conseillers agréés en France. Et puis surtout, s'il y a des besoins, tu sais que voilà, les Français aussi sont là pour vous aider, vous assister dans la continuité du maintien de cette maison et de ce beau jardin.
Thank you very much, Virginie.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye. Ciao.
Au revoir.